So my question is, as Sir told that Pakistan is going nowhere. It is there and it is a neighbor, as you have said that Atal Bihari Vajpayee said that we can't change our neighbors because geography is relevant there. So what policy should India take? Because in dealing with Pakistan, because earlier we have seen that, as you told, sir, that the Lahore bus diplomacy has started by India, Atal Bihari Vajpayee ji, and also other policies have taken place. But the outcome is like Operation Sindoor is there. India has tried to tackle. Also, India banned this Indus Water Treaty with Pakistan. So India is taking these steps, but because of the terrorism and other activities of Pakistan, it is not coming in favor in India. So what exact measures should India take? Thank you, sir.
Good question. Dr. Simi, you can now.
So your food for thought is quite intriguing. I have two interconnected questions. One is that do you really think we can rope in Pakistan or co-opt the country, given the kind of history that we share with their political and intelligence dispensation? And the second is that does the region's challenges, South Asia's challenges, stem from the structural asymmetries, primarily because of the predominance of India, or is it the absence of a shared regional identity? How do we reconcile this? Please help. Thank you so much, sir.
Really, we see there is setting a power regime change in South Asia. First, we see in what is happening in Bangladesh, then Nepal, Sri Lanka. So, in this context, what I feel, I am fear of that. What about India? My question is that to what extent is the regime changes in South Asia driven by internal dynamics versus external dynamics? And what are the implications for these changes for India?
South Asia was a focus, but was not a great focus for India and India's foreign policy. The focus was somewhere else. India had the aspiration to be seen as the world leader for the emerging nations then. A lot of nations which had emerged as a part of the decolonization process, they basically wanted to see that how best they could get a platform to discuss about their challenges, because politically they had become independent. Economically, they were very much dependent on the two power blocks. So India basically took the lead in terms of moving ahead in organizing Afro-Asian Conference way back in 1955. There was nothing for India at that point in time which could have given way for thinking about its neighborhood. And India already had been facing the problem from its immediate neighbor, that was Pakistan. India had fought a war with Pakistan during 47-48, and the challenges again were not foreseen that point in time. India thought if the matter reaches to the UN, the things can get automatically controlled and can really be moved further. But it happened the other way around. Since 1947 until now, Pakistan has been working with a single-minded aim to destabilize India. And that is something which is a part of the challenge for South Asian peace and stability. When you try to understand South Asia, as was pointed out by Professor Sadri Chariji, that it is not a contiguous region, it requires more of a cohesion. I think the challenges lies from within. Challenges basically are far too many from within, and the nations basically which surround India. Though India occupies 80% of the landmass, it contributes 80% to the GDP of the South Asian economy. But then also India has a lot of challenges because India has not been able to build some sort of confidence among its neighbor. So this is something which is very important to understand, that where did India go wrong, what really India has done in the past, and how India has given the way for the external actors to come in South Asia. As you know that China, the way China basically has come and got completely penetrated into South Asia remains a part of the problem for India, because that is something which is a matter of debate, and obviously that is posing a lot of challenges. Not only China, the presence of US in South Asia from day one, since India became independent, certainly has been a factor, and that is something which India had to contend with in the past. And for many reasons, India basically had found a lot of divergences with the US, because the United States particularly always equated India and Pakistan at the same level. And that is that was the challenge which India had confronted. So I think in the current era of geopolitical uncertainty, I think it is a high time that we shall discuss about the challenges and try to understand at what role the external actors have played in South Asia and how that really is a part of the problem, certainly not is a part of the solution. India very much would like to become a part of the solution to many of the emerging problems in South Asia. But unfortunately, that has not happened diplomatically. I think even a tiny country like Nepal, I think India has a lot of problems in terms of not only coping up with the changing behavioral pattern of Nepal, but also seeing that how their intentions really have been different in terms of dealing with India. And that is the context in which, in fact, we have a lot of challenges from Nepal coming in. If you take the other neighbor, that is Myanmar, which shares borders with 4 states of India, I think it really fuels a lot of challenges to the northeast. And that is, again, a case in point to discuss that even there is a lack of, there is completely a geopolitical vacuum in Myanmar right now, whether India can really move ahead and also see that how India can really make a way in terms of not only building its presence there, but also see that how India finds solution to many of the problems emanating from the junta system in Myanmar. And likewise, you take various examples like Bangladesh, you can take what really happened in Bangladesh recently, and obviously the rest of the world really has been questioning that how India was not really knowing that this is going to happen in Bangladesh. I think that's something which in fact India failed miserably diplomatically in terms of ascertaining the cause of the events which really shaped Bangladesh policy. But I think most of these issues basically are very pertinent, especially from the regional security point of view, the regional peace and security point of view, and that is perhaps is needed to be discussed and how best we can really prioritize, especially in terms of not only seeing that India plays a very pivotal role in not only shaping the policy for South Asia, but also coming up with certain set of solutions to many of these emerging problems. So setting this context, I certainly see that we have a very high-loaded panel and we are going to discuss a lot of these things. The first theme which I see is external influences on South Asian security conundrum, and is going to be delivered by Professor Chintamani Arvind, and he is obviously going to share his idea on this issue. He is currently the founder chairperson of Kalinga Institute of Indo-Pacific Studies and formerly rector of Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. Sir, may I request you to take the podium and speak on this particular theme?
Namaskar. Good afternoon to one and all. Now, those of you who have seen Amitabh Bachchan's movie, in one movie he sings a song, Mere Angene mein tera kya kaam hai? If you recall. What have you to do in my backyard? So India and South Asian countries can raise a question, why are the external powers interfering in my area? This is a question. But the fact remains that they always interfere in South Asia. South Asia's history is replete with foreigners coming and looting, ruling, and taking away wealth of this area. The Mongols, the Mughals, the British, the Portuguese, the French, you name it. And as when we became independent in 1987, the region was divided along very critical lines by the British. A few months after we became independent, we had to fight a war with Pakistan over Kashmir, 47-48. A few years later, China, another extra-regional power, comes and attacks India in 1962. 3 years later, the Pakistanis waged another war against India, but the role of the US was very clear how the pattern tanks were used against the Indian army. 6 years later, in 1971, we had yet another war in South Asia, where the Americans had the guts to send their nuclear power submarine aircraft carrier to Bay of Bengal to pressurize India. And then Again, a few years later, we had the Soviet military intervention in South Asia, in Afghanistan. And the war dragged on for 10 years, 79 to 89. After a brief interregnum, we had the Kargil war. And in between, you have a deep, low-intensity conflict in Kashmir. I don't know, बच्चे लोग अब तो पैदा ही नहीं हुए होंगे. Not a single day would pass without a headline in the Indian papers about the horrors being staged in Kashmir. All kinds of bombs exploding, guns barking, those days. Again, come closer to history. 2001, in this century, when the 9/11 incident took place, yet another major intervention of the external powers in South Asia. The United States and all the NATO members were involved in Afghanistan for 20 years. So the role of external power is always there in South Asia. Now, I gave a title, I don't know whether it's here or not. The conundrum in South Asia. Is there? So, what is that conundrum in South Asia if you really want to understand what's going on? Conundrum is basically the difficulty to assess and analyze the security situation in South Asia. There are very many regions, and all the regions you know it. So, I'll not spend too much time in explaining. Number one is the peculiar geography of South Asia, where India has borders with all the other countries, including Afghanistan, by the way. But other countries rarely share a border except Pakistan and Afghanistan. Number two, India's size is too big. Probably the rest of South Asia put together, combined, India is bigger. In terms of demography, the number of people who reside, huge population in India, not in other South Asian countries. In terms of the economic capabilities, the fifth largest economy in the world is India. And look at what's happening to the Pakistani economy, which is sinking by the day. And look at the other South Asian countries coming and begging India at the time of crisis, help us, including now, the energy crisis. This is another conundrum. So when you analyze the demographic, the geographic, the political, the economic asymmetry, it is so jumbled up that looking at South Asia as one entity and analyze South Asia becomes really complicated. Now, I've only hinted how this region has been affected by wars of different kind, different size, different intensity throughout. But very briefly, as the Cold War unfolded after India became independent, we saw a very interesting competition in South Asia by two major powers. The United States had an alliance relationship, military alliance relationship with Pakistan. And for whatever reasons, India had a strategic partnership with the former Soviet Union. And both these powers were playing tremendous amount of role in South Asian politics, South Asian security throughout the Cold War. When the Cold War ended, very interesting, when the Cold War ended, India and the US were not even looking at each other on very many issues. They started a new kind of strategic partnership whose trajectory was upward moving until very recently. Big change. And Pakistan became strategically irrelevant for a long duration. But in between patches, it became the frontline state of the United States during the first round of Afghanistan war and second round of Afghanistan war. But what is interesting is the US has always had a kind of tactical alliance with Pakistan. But the direction of Indo-US relationship had a strategic dimension, long-term partnership. This is the difference. But in the post-Cold War era, one of the most significant developments that took place was the rise of a superpower along India's border, that was China. Unprecedented economic growth, unprecedented growth in military capabilities and even on technology. So, apart from Russia was by and large out, except India was a big arms bazaar for Russia. But America was in because India was with the USA. Now, China is another actor which became very, very powerful, partly because of the economy. That is our whole right now. If you have economic power, you can spread your influence. And China is present all around India. India does not have the capability to compete with China in terms of economic corridor and investment in the immediate level. So it is yet another actor. But the problem is, this is the complication, the conundrum. The problem is, China is also an all-weather friend of Pakistan. And the US refuses to abandon Pakistan and place the Pakistan card which is India. So today, this difficulty, this conundrum is because both Washington DC and Beijing, they play the Pakistan card against a country which is slowly rising as a major player in the global order. And how best to really handle it is the main issue, the main complication. It is because of China, all the neighboring countries that we have, they are beholden to China for help. Some of them have a misconceived notion. Indians are Burmas. Indians always behave like big brothers. Indians are the exploiters. So anti-India sentiment that is spreading around South Asia is partly because of the narrative faced by China. This is yet another major problem. Right? So at the moment, the security situation is such that India, because of its own limited capability, is the issue that Alok was raising. Is India a hegemon of South Asia? India is not a hegemon in terms of the hegemony we understand by reading the Western concept. But in terms of other benefits that we are giving to the neighboring countries, well, a hegemon with a difference. Sri Lanka went closer to China. When China came and built the Humboldt port, and the Sinhalese got nothing out of it, rather became indebted to China, then Sri Lanka who came to India for help when they had the debt crisis, help us, SOS. Today, when there is energy crisis, Bangladesh, Nepal, Sri Lanka, Maldives all come begging India, help us, help us, help us. Right? Same with Bangladesh. For 15 years, we had such grand relations with Bangladesh. The regime changed, and just before that, you saw what's happening in Bangladesh. Some of them are deeply, apparently convinced that India is a dushman, an enemy. In spite of all this, same story can go to Nepal also. I visited Nepal. I don't know how many Indians are taking more of it. Wherever I was staying, there was Nepal, Pakistan Friendship Society paid, mementos. And they've not taken all of it. So the security has become very complicated when the Indians, like us, would say, we help them so much, they still think India is an enemy. That narrative is really very, very complicated. Now, again, because of lack of time, let me fast forward. As of now, what is happening? Today, the world is changing so fast that whatever happens beyond a region would always affect the region, partly because of globalization, interconnectedness, interdependence. So today, the world is in a state of flux. There is nothing called global order that we understood maybe a couple of years ago. You have the Trump phenomenon in the United States, but there is nothing called alliance relationship that we studied in the classroom and taught to our students in the classroom. This is what alliance is. It's undermining NATO alliance, undermining Japan, South Korea, now undermining even Indo-US strategic partnership. The big change where he is pinpointing, targeting, and isolating India as a country which is helping Russia by buying Russian oil and import the strength. Doesn't care about the Chinese who buy more oil than us. Doesn't care about the Washington also involved in trade relations with Russia. What did he change? And the same person, Trump, he's again hugging the Pakistani army chief, whom they call now Field Marshal. A few months after the Pahalgam terror attack, can you believe this? What a major change. When the Pahalgam terror attack came, ordinarily, the Washington DC would have condemned the attack and supported India. That we are standing with you. Please read the content of what Donald Trump said after the terror attack in Balochistan on Pakistan and see what he said about India. It is a major change that we must take note of. In all these situations, China, we don't consider China to be a big enemy except the border problem. With China, we are together in promoting a multilateral world order. With China, we are opposing any kind of unilateralism. If you see the China-India history for a long time, centuries, the number of times we really fought, you can count them in fingers. The number of times we exchange ideas and philosophers and even did trade is much more positive. Even in the midst of the Galwan Valley, we kept on buying Chinese stuff. We banned the technology, but our trade deficit continued and it increased. But handling that China is becoming difficult because China and the US separately, in parallel, continue to play the Pakistan card. So the big question is, again, what Alok raised the question. What should India do? 4 or 5 points and I conclude. What should India do? This is something out of the box, not to be quoted, but an idea that I'm doing, food for thought, as Siri said. You cannot uproot Pakistan and throw them somewhere. They are there. You cannot push them away because those guys have nuclear bomb and the missiles. We are witnessing the capability of an Iran which has been isolated since 1979 and how they are hitting back the American facilities in the Gulf. So don't undermine the power of the drone and the missiles in the contemporary world. If we cannot wish Pakistan away, should we think as even intellectuals, this is a perennial sore in India? It's a perennial problem for India. Nothing is perennial. Nothing is perennial. So the academic community must think innovatively how best to handle Pakistan and rope it in for South Asia's growth and prosperity. Number 2, SARC is not taking up the ground. We all know the reasons. Should we bury SARC and write an obituary about SARC? I don't think so. As somebody said, I don't remember, I think again, Alok said, BIMSTEC experiment was not taking off. If that is the case, how to revive SARC? Think positive is another one. Number 3, my recommendation. The world is increasingly becoming transactional, give and take. Because partly because of Trump, partly because of what Charlie said about the trade, the mega trend in the trade, WTO is dying dead. So if the world is going to be transactional, should we have long-term strategic relationship with the country or don't trust anyone except your own self? So that self-reliance, Atmanirbhar Bharat, is the key. With all these, let me conclude by saying, if India truly wants to become a Viksit Bharat, peace and stability and cooperation in South Asia is an imperative. It will always come on your way and hit you hard and limit your capability to become Viksit Bharat. अपना घर ही सही नहीं है तो क्या बनाओगे इमारत? So I think it is time when academic communities and all of us will think very hard in the midst of the troublesome thing happening around the globe, how to manage things, think positive, do positive. Thank you very much for your attention. Namaste.